Hey YouTube, it's Cello Ben, and today's day 8 of the 100 days of practice. That's right, I have officially made it through an entire Hanukkah of practice videos. Today I'm going to be working on a Tchaikovsky excerpt, but I want to preface it by saying I had the good fortune earlier today of going to an interactive seminar by Dr. Noah Kageyama, who's a performance psychologist and specializes in training musicians to perform at their best from a psychological perspective. He's a violinist by training and actually has degrees from Juilliard. And Juilliard is the reason why I know him, because I met him when I was doing my undergrad. He used to run the chamber music office there, and so I would, my first year there, I would go to him with chamber music questions about groups and whatnot, but I think my second year there I actually worked for him in the office, so he's become really world-renowned as a performance psychologist, but originally I knew him as my boss, which is kind of fun, but he runs a great website that I would recommend to anybody out there as a wonderful resource. It's bulletproofmusician.com, and the reason I'm mentioning all of this is that in Noah's seminar today, he discussed a couple of methods for getting yourself in the right mindset of playing what you really want to hear. And he said that there are a couple of options that are sort of 50-50 in terms of which works best for you individually. The one option is hearing in your head your own voice singing it. And the other option is hearing in your head your own instrument playing it. Now, the latter doesn't work for me, because if I try to do that, I just hear myself playing it, and I'm usually making the same, usually what I want to change in my playing is not being changed in my mental perception of my playing. So, that does not work for me personally, but it probably will for a lot of people. What works for me is hearing myself singing it in my head. So I've picked a very singing excerpt to practice today, and this is from Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony, the second movement, Andantino. And so I want to sing through a little bit of it in my head and then start playing. Okay, so there's some stuff I've got to fix in there. Number one is the intonation on the big shifts. That's my number one priority right now. So I'm going to go through them. But I do think that singing that through in my head gave me sort of a better musical feel when starting this excerpt at the cello, and also sort of helped me to ease into it a little bit, knowing up here what I wanted it to sound like. But as for the intonation, one thing that can be really helpful when practicing shifts, if you're doing what they call a French shift, which is where that kind of shift as opposed as opposed to that, the Russian shift, is to sort of really bring out an intermediary note while you're practicing. So I'm overshooting that. So now that was a D flat in the middle. I want to make it less obvious now. Less obvious still. Let's relax. That was too fast. All right, now time to practice these fifth shifts in this sequence. I have a tendency to drag on this pickup to the next, so let me try and get that more in time. I'm going to do this once through with a metronome. It's probably about 54 beats a minute. I was almost right. It's closer to 58 maybe. And let me sing it in my head a little bit. Make sure to phrase it nicely. And go for great intonation and smooth shifting and light shifting. So a couple of intonation things still, and then a couple of phrasing things that I didn't observe as carefully as I need to. So those are part of my next steps, and then right now I want to solidify these last two bars tempo-wise, because I got it in tempo more or less that time, but the sound wasn't great, and it sounded a bit frantic. So I think we're talking a bow distribution issue here. Or a shift. What if I go down to 2? I think that's what I'll have to do. And I have enough time before I need this excerpt next to change that fingering. Let's see. too sharp now. It's getting better. What I didn't do though was observe that last dynamic. Now it wasn't clean. Getting better. That's something to solidify, as well as continuing to solidify the intonation, making sure that the phrasing is really there, making sure that the shifts are light, that I observe all the dynamics, and maybe, based on feedback I've gotten in the past, take this excerpt in the end a little bit slower than I'm doing it right now. So those are my next steps. But I'm not gonna, those are things that I'm gonna take care of in more depth off camera. For now, I wanna spend the last little part of the video explaining to you, or telling you as I promised, how it went last night. Because remember, I did that video where I did some really slow practicing. I didn't touch any of the fast stuff at tempo. And the good news is that almost all of the fast stuff went great. There were a couple of slower soli that I had that did not go as well as I would have hoped. But it taught me something, which was that I think that any errors that happened could have been prevented by having less physical tension. So that's something for me to really work on. For me to learn to trust myself more and just let my body relax into the cello. So nothing was disastrous, and luckily I'm betting that nothing went quite as badly as I thought. I'm sure that I'll be, because that just is how it tends to be. You get really critical of yourself right in the moment. And then you listen to a recording back at some point and you say, oh, I'm pleasantly surprised. This is way better than I thought. So I'm hoping that that's the case. But for the time being, I'm off to practice some more Tchaikovsky and then move on to some other excerpts, some of which I will be showcasing later in the week. For now, have a wonderful night, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 9. Take care.